Okay, so this is going to be a video about what to do if you're hard stuck in gold or platinum or master rank in Melee, and it's going to be about fundamentals. The stuff you're watching in the background, that's just going to be combos that Project Clippy picked up. It's not relevant to the video, it's just something to be on screen so that it's not a black screen. So no need to pay attention to those. It's just whatever the bot picked up. So let's get right into it. So you remember how there used to be like an old school player that would give you advice about mind games or fundamentals in your scene, and it didn't always really make sense to you, but they still always beat you whenever you play. And when you ask them how they did it, they'd say something super vague about fundamentals that's hard to catch on to, and it's just frustrating, right? Well, that was my experience when I was new in 2015, and the original generation of Smashers they were still playing the game for the most part, but they were all adults with lives and responsibilities, so they didn't really care that much, and they would leave the game behind forever, like maybe just a couple of years after I started playing. But when they mostly left, we lost something as a community, and it wasn't camaraderie or anything, although we did lose a little bit of that, but really it was a subset of skills that this new generation of players, they either had to rediscover it or they just ignored it completely. For the most part, they ignore them completely. And I think a lot of that has to do with the old school not explaining it well. Since I started playing a decade ago, it's safe to say that I'm old school now. I've beaten a lot of people that I used to be a really big fan of, and I even placed 33rd at Genesis without really preparing, which is way further than I ever intended to go, even when I cared. So I teach a new generation of players now in a new region, and most of this knowledge is for them, but it's also going to be good for those of you that are in an isolated area or you don't have like a mentor for the game. Maybe you don't attend that many tournaments and you mostly play online. I'm going to teach you about fundamentals, mind games, intangibles, whatever you want to call those skills. I started playing at a time when the scientific frame data optimization approach to the game was picking up full steam. But most players who were better than me, they still took an approach based on their own creativity and adapting to the opponent. The old generation, they didn't necessarily do this because they were like smarter than the young people or anything like that. They just played this way out of necessity because all old school players, when I started, people who were old school when I started, okay, so this is like people who started in 2001, okay, they all had holes in their game. One guy, he can't ledge dash. The other guy can't shield drop. Sometimes there were even people who they can only L cancel half the time, so how are they succeeding without those skills? You need those skills. So why are they able to compete with people who have them? It's because they played less for coverage and they played more against their opponent's weaknesses. So let me paint a picture of this for you. Let's say you main Fox, for example, and maybe you find yourself doing aerials and then it misses and you turn around and you up tilt a couple of times afterwards, and then your opponent gets hit by it and you combo them to death. Say you're playing online, maybe they rage quit the game. In real life, they just get mad and they call you a lame player. And let's say you still, even though you can do that combo to death, you still go 3-2 at the local. You can't make it to top 64 at the major tournament, and you're platinum rank online. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that those people who raged on you, they're not just salty because they lost. I mean, they are salty because they lost, don't get me wrong, but there's more to it, even if maybe they can't articulate it. So why is that lame play? Like, why is an old school player so likely to call something like that situation lame? I mean, if you get a 0 to death, that's not lame, right? Well, it's not because they're stupid or salty, even though sometimes they might be a little salty, or it's not also because they have some chivalrous code on how you're supposed to play. They're just struggling to articulate the skill that you're missing, a skill that they value a lot, and it's missing from a lot of the modern player base. Now, if you play like I just described against a strong player, you might find that you can rack up a lot of damage really quick, but you struggle really hard to close out stocks, and they probably hit you with some hard reads that seem just impossible or insane to even try. Like, they always know what you're going to do. And your problem is that everything you're doing is based on coverage. You're covering the most amount of execution failures from your opponent or the most amount of neutral options that they might pick. You know, like going back to the Fox up tilt after the aerial, for an example. One of the most common cases of hard stuck platinum syndrome is that Fox up tilt after the aerial that you do in the neutral game. It often beats people even when they know it's coming, right? That's just because it's so hard to get in between the aerial and the up tilt, and your opponent, they might not always know when they have time to get in between, or even in between the up tilts, and that makes it feel really good and like a really safe way to cover yourself. And then you have a strong combo game, right? So you just beat them to death afterwards. And it's like, well, this is a great option, but that couldn't be further from the truth against a strong player. It actually makes you 100 times easier to whiff punish when you do something like that. And they know you're going to do it from experience. It's because you're spacing yourself in certain ways. You know, you're more likely to do certain things. One habit connects to the other, and it's really hard to teach and learn that intangible knowledge and skill, but it's something you need to constantly be thinking about if you want to reach that next level of the game. Try to think about how is what you're doing telegraphing what you might do next. How can you subvert your opponent's expectations so that they can't hard read you? And you want to do the reverse to them, you know? What are they going to do to try and trick me? That's a mind game, okay? That's fundamentals. That's what intangibles are. Yomi, whatever you want to call it, you have to think about that. That this isn't necessarily true if you're kind of a bad player. No offense, but if you're, the bronze or the silver rank player, you probably just are missing combos, or maybe you can't do like your ledge dash or something. And I do think, because I am from a newish school of play, I'm old school now, but when I started, I was from the optimization era, so I think you should learn those things first. You got to learn that stuff first because it's easier to learn, and it gets you a lot of mileage, right? But if you're platinum rank, your master rank online, let's say, you need to hear this shit. And why should you listen to me? Well, I play online. I could go undefeated online and make it into the top 50, and I have done this. Okay, and I've probably beaten some of your favorite players. So if I got to make an appeal to authority, this is it. Trust me, you need to be able to do this shit, even if it's hard to explain and hard to understand. You have to pay attention to what you might be telegraphing and how your opponent's telegraphing themselves. And you're never going to be able to do this without giving some stuff up. You're going to get hit by a lot of things that you feel like, maybe they shouldn't have worked. You'll probably make reads that don't pan out, but the next time that you play someone, you got to really try to pay attention to their habits in the neutral game. Call it out with stuff that you think would specifically beat that, instead of just trying to cover as many things as possible, like with the aerial into the up tilt, right? Try not to do things like that. Try to avoid high coverage options. Try to go for something that directly counters what you think your opponent's going to do. And you will start off playing worse when you do this, but you need to do it if you want to improve. And this applies to all the facets of the game. If your opponent always jumps out of combos, just let them jump out of the combo and hit them out of their jump, even if you could have gotten a true combo. In fact, you should do this especially when you could have gotten a guaranteed punish, because that's when your opponent is most likely to perform like a coverage option or an execution test. They're trying to jump out of your chain grab or whatever it is because they know that's the only way they're getting out if you keep trying to do the chain grab. So just know that they're going to try that. Hit them out of it. It'll give you an easier time. It'll make you more creative. You'll be able to beat people with better execution than you if you can make reads like this. And sometimes people are going to have better execution than you. That's just the way it is. Say your opponent's recovering. Let's go to recovery with Fox, for example. Watch the path that they trace through the air before they recover. Maybe they have a habit. Maybe they always jump and then fall in a way where they up B and then they're going to up B to the ledge, right, in the same spot every time. And that's hard to cover because what if they go up? You can only kind of pick one. Why even let them do that? If you know they always up B in the same spot, just go out and kill them for it. Whatever character you play. Say you play Falco, just jump out and down air them. If you play Falcon, just go knee them. You play Jigglypuff, just back air them out, when you know what they're going to do, capitalize upon it. Try to know what your opponent's going to do. Try to be able to make those predictions. If you don't make plays like this, you're never going to get out of the upper middle skill brackets. Because strong players, they're just not going to make the mistakes necessary for you to get away with playing a high coverage, low read neutral game. You don't have the odds are not in your favor when you do that, okay? And this topic's really hard to put into words, but I hope that rant helps at least a few of you open up a new side of the game. If you got anything to add or ask, just go ahead and leave a comment. I would appreciate that. Thank you.